Hello, and Merry Christmas. Today we are discussing Samantha's Surprise, which is the third book in the core Samantha series from American Girl. And as you might have guessed, it is Samantha's Christmas story. I'm guessing that this is going to be shorter than my videos on Meet Samantha and Samantha Learns a Lesson. Part of that is that my chronic illness is flaring up today, and I don't want to film and edit a hour-long analysis of a children's book. And the other part is that I just have less to say about this one. Meet Samantha, and especially Samantha Learns a Lesson, had a lot of really interesting things to say about class and social privilege and financial inequality. And I've had a lot of fun unpacking that, but we kind of get a break from that in Samantha's Surprise. This book kind of sets the politics aside for a moment, I think probably intentionally by the author. And instead, what we get is kind of a very basic, heartwarming Christmas story. Because as we all know, there has never been and never will be a successful Christmas story that deals with class politics. So, I might be the wrong person to talk about this book because I am admittedly not a very big Christmas person. I am much more of a Halloween girl myself. I have that in common with Molly, who maybe we'll talk about someday. But I am trying to get in the spirit. I have my hot chocolate with lots of cinnamon, which is how Samantha likes her hot chocolate, as we learn from Samantha's Surprise. And I have to agree, I think adding cinnamon is the objectively correct way to make hot chocolate. I've got my little tree. I don't own any Christmas clothes, but red is festive. And yeah, so like in my previous reviews, we're going to go through a quick summary in case you haven't read the book in a minute, and then we're going to get into some of my thoughts. Samantha's Surprise starts in the build-up to Christmas Eve, and we quickly learn that unlike me, Samantha loves Christmas. It is her favorite day of the year. She's super excited to give her handmade gifts to all of her loved ones, and I do really like how this book captures that childlike sense of Christmas joy and wonder and whimsy. If you are someone who likes Hallmark Christmas movies, I think you would genuinely enjoy this book because that's very much what the vibe is. So in chapter 1, Samantha and her friend Ida from school are window shopping. They are walking past all the shops and looking at all the beautiful Christmas displays in the windows, and they come across a shop that has a Nutcracker doll in the window. And this is not Nutcracker doll as in the doll is a nutcracker. The doll is meant to be Clara, the protagonist from the Nutcracker ballet, and she's wearing a beautiful pink ballerina-esque dress, and she has a little tiny nutcracker in her hand, so that you know who she is. And Samantha really wants this doll. She really thinks it's beautiful, and remember, she gave her doll Lydia to Nellie in the first book, but she doesn't want to ask her Grandmary to get this doll for her for Christmas because she feels like two very expensive dolls in 1 year is too much. And as Samantha is admiring this doll and she and Ida are window shopping, Ida invites her to her Christmas party. It's going to be a very grown-up party, and Samantha's really excited about it. So from there, she goes back home, and in chapter 2, we get a really interesting look at Samantha making Christmas gifts for all of her loved ones. And I think this is very telling. I think we learn a lot about Samantha here, because even though she has access to a lot of wealth, Grandmary would definitely give her money to buy gifts if she wanted to. She really enjoys and really takes pride in making the perfect gift for each person in her life. And that act of creating the gift seems to be what's really important to her. It's very cute. She hides all her handmade gifts in her room. She's especially excited about the one that she's making for her Uncle Gardner, who is her surrogate dad and her favorite person in the world. She's making him this beautiful little trinket box that has paper mache, and it has all of these bits of art that she's cut out of books and magazines pasted to it, and she's really excited to give it to him. After she works on her Christmas gifts, she has her daily, hour of parlor time with Grandmary, and here Samantha learns that Cornelia, Uncle Gard's special friend, is going to be joining them for Christmas. And in all of this excitement, Samantha doesn't feel like it would be right to ask Grandmary for the doll. So at this point, the story kind of flashes forward several days, and the entire house is full of activity, getting ready for Cornelia to visit, because this is no longer an intimate family Christmas. This is now an opportunity to impress this woman who is important enough to Gard that he's bringing her home for the holidays, which then, as now, is kind of a sign that a relationship is getting serious, right? So Samantha, alongside making gifts, also really enjoys making her own Christmas decorations. She has these paper snowflakes that she's cut out by hand. She has little snowmen that she's made, and she tries to put these homemade decorations up around the house, but she's quickly shot down because Grandmary has decided to hire professional decorators this year. She has hired a professional florist to do all of the wreaths and garlands. She has hired a whole team of people to get the house looking really elegant and festive for Christmas. And this really upsets Samantha, because typically in the past she's been able to put up her handmade decorations, and she only gets more upset when Grandmary tells her that she will not be able to attend Ida's party because that's the day that Uncle Gard and Cornelia are arriving, and Samantha needs to be at the house to welcome them. And this is really rough. Samantha does not take it well, and she kind of has a lot of really bad, angry feelings about Cornelia at this point, because she feels like Cornelia's visit is ruining Christmas, because all of these Christmas traditions that are very important to her are not being upheld. She does not like the changes that Grandmary is making, and she's really disappointed to not be able to go to her friend's party. So Cornelia and Uncle Gard arrive. They quickly start to kind of win Samantha over. She's kind of in Scrooge mode when they first get there. She's decided, she's not going to give Cornelia a present. She's going to give everyone else these beautiful handmade gifts, and Cornelia's not going to get anything from her. And she's kind of grumpy and determined not to enjoy their visit. But of course, Uncle Gard and Cornelia invite her to go sledding with them, and as they are sledding and playing in the snow, Samantha really starts to warm up to Cornelia. They finish their sledding and they go into town, and do some last minute Christmas shopping, as you do, and they pass by the toy store, and Samantha sees that the Nutcracker doll is still there, but she still doesn't feel like she can ask for it. She just can't quite make that leap. And at this point, Samantha decides, you know, I really should get a Christmas gift for Cornelia. She's actually pretty cool. So she gets Cornelia an entire pound of fancy imported French chocolates from the candy store in town. And then later that evening, Samantha and Guard go to pick out a Christmas tree. It's just the two of them. This is the first time they've really been alone since Guard and Cornelia started getting serious. They have a really sweet moment together, and they find the perfect tree. So they've got the tree set up. They have actual fire on it because obviously they don't have electric tree lights yet. They all sing carols around the tree, and then it's Christmas Day. And on Christmas morning, Samantha goes to open her gifts, and Cornelia has bought her the Nutcracker doll. Cornelia gives this doll to Samantha. Samantha never asked for it, but Cornelia somehow knew that it would be the perfect gift. When Samantha asks her about that, Cornelia says, well, I just knew that it was something I would have loved, and I got it because I loved it. And it's another moment that really highlights how much Samantha and Cornelia have in common. So of course, Samantha gives Cornelia the trinket box that she originally made for Uncle Guard. It's very clear that Guard knows what's going on, but he's a really good sport about the chocolates. And I mean, a pound of chocolate is a pound of chocolate. He's still very happy with his gift. But Samantha gives this beautiful handmade trinket box to Cornelia. It's the most beautiful thing she's ever made. She's really proud of it. It's a really touching moment because Cornelia seems to realize how meaningful this gift is to Samantha. And then the book ends with Uncle Guard asking Cornelia to marry him. He has a Christmas morning proposal in front of his mother and his 9-year-old niece, and Cornelia says yes, and we zoom out, and it's a very Merry Christmas. And if this book was a movie, it would have that really intense golden fuzzy filter over it here at the end. You can almost hear Tiny Tim in the background. It's very Hallmark vibes. So as you can probably tell from that summary, there is not a lot of plot in this one. This is by far the shortest book in the series so far, and it's also written by a different author than the first two. So the first two Samantha books were written by Susan Adler, and this book is written by Maxine Rose Schur. And then the second half of the series, books 4, 5, and 6, are actually written by a third author. Those books are written by Valerie Tripp. This is a really weird thing about Samantha's series. I have to assume that there was stuff going on behind the scenes, because typically as a brand, American Girl will have a single author write all of the core books for a given character. And then they might bring other authors in later to write short stories and tie-ins and additional books, but the core series is usually handled by a single author throughout. Valerie Tripp, for example, wrote all of the Molly books, all of the Felicity books, all of the Josefina books. So it's very interesting that Samantha gets passed around, especially because she was one of the 3 original American Girls. And I think some of the inconsistencies from book to book are probably because of the different authors coming and going as the series was being developed. Aside from the book being short, there's also just not a lot happening plot-wise. This is definitely a character-focused book. Specifically, this book kind of exists to develop the relationship between Samantha and Guard, and especially to develop the relationship between Samantha and Cornelia. And I just want to give a warning. I am going to be discussing spoilers for the remaining books in Samantha's series. I assume that most of the people who watch these videos have already read these books, but I just want to be very clear, because so much of what Samantha's surprise does is setting up character arcs that will come to fruition later in the series. It's actually really hard to talk about this book without talking about books 4, 5, and 6. So just know that there will be spoilers for the entire Samantha core series in this video, and especially for changes for Samantha. Just full disclosure. So this book is very interesting, and I apologize, my thoughts are less organized. I don't really have a thesis for this analysis. I just have some observations. Because aside from developing characters, the other main goal of this book is to be a heartwarming Christmas story, and I think it does accomplish that, but that's not really something that I'm interested in talking about, so I'm trying to find other things to discuss. I do think the scene in chapter 1 where Samantha is looking at the Nutcracker doll in the store window is very interesting. I think that we see Samantha sort of becoming aware of her privilege and becoming more aware of financial realities. This is the first time in the series that Samantha thinks something might be too expensive to ask for. That hasn't really been a concern for her in the past. So that is interesting, and I think we can sort of see that as part of her developing class consciousness throughout the series. We also see that she's a very thoughtful gift giver. I talked about this earlier, but gifts are really big for Samantha. We definitely learn in this book, I think gift giving is her primary love language. And we've already seen in the series that she likes to receive gifts, but here we really see that giving gifts is also really important to her. And giving gifts that are thoughtful, that are personalized, and that are handmade or otherwise special is really important to her. So it's about the gift, but for Samantha, it's very much also about what the gift represents. For example, the gift that she's making for Guard and that she eventually gives to Cornelia is this really beautiful trinket box that she's making. She's been spending lots of time on it. She's being very careful with it. She says it's the most beautiful thing she's ever made. And it makes sense to Samantha for that to be what she gives Guard, because he is the most important and special person in her life. So by turning around and giving that book to Cornelia, Samantha is really validating that connection, and I think Cornelia does realize that. We also learn in this book that Grandmary also prefers handmade gifts. So I think that's another thing that Samantha probably learned from her grandmother, and it's just another interesting note. Nellie is almost not in this book at all. Hold on. So as a child, I always thought that this little girl next to Samantha on the book cover was Nellie. That is not Nellie. That is Ida. Nellie is not in that scene. Nellie is, in fact, hardly in this book at all. I believe she's only in one scene. And she is making Christmas gifts with Samantha. Her one appearance in this book is the girls basically having a crafting date to work on their handmade Christmas gifts together, which is super cute and something that I still do with my friends now, so respect. And Nellie is making a pinecone wreath for her employer, which is very interesting. She is making a gift for Mrs. Van Sicklen. There's no mention of Nellie making a gift for her mother, or either of her sisters, or even for Samantha. The only person that we are explicitly told that Nellie is giving a Christmas gift to is her boss, which is an interesting choice. I think that we can interpret that in several different ways. I am choosing to believe that it means that Mrs. Van Sicklen is a very good employer who treats her servants very well, and that maybe she's taken Nellie under her wing. Maybe they have a little bit of a special connection. We've talked, especially in the Samantha Learns a Lesson video, about how Samantha and Grandmary have a very intimate relationship with their servants, and maybe it's the same with Mrs. Van Sicklen. We know that she's a friend of Grandmary's, so perhaps that's why Nellie is making her a gift. But I thought it was a very interesting choice that Nellie, who, as we discussed in the last video, is 9 years old, in school full-time and working full-time, is choosing to make a gift for her boss, for her employer. That was a little odd to me, but I feel like this book, I feel like it's easy to read this book and come away with the idea that Samantha is a spoiled brat, because she does get a little bit bratty in here, but I think the book does a good job of showing Samantha's perspective and showing her justification or her reasoning for behaving the way she does. I think this book, more than the previous two, really portrays Samantha as a 9-year-old with 9-year-old feelings and emotional reactions. So for example, when Grandmary tells her that she can no longer go to her friend's Christmas party because she has to welcome her uncle and his girlfriend, I can see why Samantha's upset about that. You know, when you are a kid, it sucks to be told no, but it sucks way, way more to be told yes and then have that yes revoked later, which is what happens here. So I think that's a very accurate reaction. I think it's not fair, but I think it's understandable that a child would be really upset by that. So I like that this book lets Samantha be a kid, because I think sometimes in the American Girl books, these girls have to deal with so much of the horrors of American history that they don't really get to be children. So I do like that this book lets Samantha be a kid, and it lets her have a tantrum. And she deserves it. It's also very interesting, this book, this Christmas Visit, seems to be the first time that Samantha realizes that Gard and Cornelia are dating, which is, they haven't been subtle about it. He's been bringing her to his mother's house. He talks about her nonstop. It's been commented on in the book that they're always together. Like, they haven't been subtle about the fact that they're romantically involved. So I think it's another sign of how sheltered Samantha is, especially when it comes to things like romance and adult relationships, that she seems genuinely surprised and she has to see them basically in an intimate moment. She basically has to hear Uncle Gard say that he romantically loves Cornelia to be like, oh, I guess they're dating. Which I just thought was funny. I do really like what this book does with Samantha and Cornelia's relationship. There's a really nice moment after they're sledding where Samantha thinks about how Cornelia really understands her. And I think that's true. I think Cornelia really gets Samantha in a way that a lot of the adults in her life do not. And these two have a really special connection. I think as much as this book doesn't really have a plot and doesn't really contribute a lot to the overall story of the series, I think it is really important because this book plants the seed of that connection between Samantha and Cornelia, which is going to become important later. I do really like that we get to see Samantha and Cornelia kind of fall in love with each other in this book. There's some really beautiful, really touching scenes of them bonding over their shared love of Christmas and, you know, enjoying kind of rough play and getting dirty. There's a scene where Cornelia's playing in the snow and her fancy hat and coat are messed up and she's all wet with melted snow and she's kind of scruffed up. And that's really the first time that Samantha thinks, hey, Cornelia might be okay. And I really like that we get to see them fall for each other in this book. I think Cornelia really seems to value Samantha. Cornelia has very modern ideas about children and parenthood, especially compared to someone like Grandmary. And I think Samantha really responds well to having that mutual respect almost. Having this adult in her life who views her as a complete person and who values her as that person. And this is especially fun and wholesome to read when you know that Cornelia and Gardner adopt Samantha later in the series. When I was a kid, I did not actually have this book. I only had the American Girl books that my mom had picked up at thrift stores and play swaps. So I had Meet Samantha, I had Samantha Learns a Lesson, Happy Birthday Samantha, and Changes for Samantha. So I did not have this context. I did not have Samantha's surprise. And without this book, Gard and Cornelia adopting Samantha kind of comes out of nowhere. And it kind of seems like they're only adopting her because Grandmary can't take care of her anymore. But with the context of Samantha's surprise, we see that both Gardner and Cornelia really love Samantha, they really care about her, and it makes me wonder if at this point in the story they've already talked about the possibility of adopting her someday. Because clearly, as we learn in Changes for Samantha, they both love kids, they both want kids, and they both want that kid to be Samantha. So I just wonder if, as they were discussing marriage and discussing a future together, if that was one of the things that came up. Because it does kind of seem like Cornelia's goal on this Christmas trip is to win over Samantha. We get another gift exchange at the end of the book on Christmas Day. And once again, like in Meet Samantha, gifts are very much connected to the idea of family for Samantha. Especially as we talked about, dolls are connected to motherhood in this series. So Samantha's original doll, Lydia, is named after her dead mother because that doll resembles her mother and reminds Samantha of this mom who passed away when she was so young that Samantha didn't really ever get to know her. And in my Meet Samantha video, we talked about how by giving that doll to Nellie, Samantha is extending this sense of family and of being taken care of. So I think it's really interesting that the first gift that Cornelia gives Samantha is also a doll. Specifically, it is the doll that replaces Lydia. And I wonder if that's intentional, if that's a little bit of foreshadowing that Cornelia is going to be Samantha's new mom. But either way, I think that's very significant. I think the choice to have that gift be explicitly connected to Lydia, the doll that Grandmary gave Samantha, was very interesting, and I think it was it's a storytelling choice I really like. So that's kind of it. That's my thoughts on Samantha's Surprise. Like I said, I don't have as much to say about this one. I definitely liked the 2 books by Susan Adler more. I think so far my favorite has been Samantha Learns a Lesson, but I did like this book. Like I said, I'm not a very Christmassy person. Christmas stories are not something that I really ever seek out myself. But I did like this story. I liked the way it developed Samantha's relationships with Gardner and Cornelia. I liked the way it set up future events in the series. And I did think it was very cute and very wholesome and very heartwarming. So if that's ever something that you're looking for, I do think that this is a good choice for just a cozy, Christmassy, low-stakes read. Well, I am just about out of cocoa, so good timing there. I am thankful to you guys for joining me for this discussion. Thank you especially to the people who have commented on the first 2 videos. I really expected this to be a series that I just did for myself and for a couple of my friends who also grew up with American Girl. So it's been really awesome to see other people commenting and talking about how this reminded them of things or sharing their own thoughts. I really appreciate the comments. Thank you guys so much. And I will see you next time when we discuss Happy Birthday, Samantha. Bye!